What's going on, Geeks and Gamers? This is Ryan with RK Outpost and geeksandgamers.com, and I am here with two lovely ladies for our first ever roundtable discussion on The Mandalorian, because we all watched the first episode, and we have a lot of different opinions on it, and we wanted to share them with you guys. So let me allow them to introduce themselves. First, over here we have Miss Mary Mayhem. How are you, Mary?
Hi, I'm doing great, Ryan. Well, hi, guys. I am Mary B. I am the Mistress of Mayhem, disruptor of the narrative, and official Whammon card holder. You can find me over on my channel, Mary Mayhem, where I talk about newsy news stuff during the week and have a little fun on the weekend. So, yeah, thanks for hosting this, Mr. Ryan.
Yes. Oh, it is my pleasure. And down below me here, we have her first appearance on Geeks and Gamers, which we're really excited for, Geeky Candy. Candace, how are you doing?
I feel awkward because I see you without a tank top, and I'm curious, where am I? Who are you? And what are you doing with this stream? No, just kidding. I'm feeling good. I'm really happy. Yeah, I'm Candace, aka Geeky Candy. You can call me either. And I am kind of a geek when it comes to all these kinds of new shows. I do deep dives. Check out my channel sometime. I love The Mandalorian, so I've got lots of stuff up there for you to supplement this.
I've never seen a person work harder on learning about something that's not even here yet, Candace.
Yeah, Candace put a lot of eggs in this Mandalorian basket. She is so happy that it's here.
Yes. Perhaps well placed, though. Perhaps very well placed.
Yes.
Very true. But you can find both all of our links for our channels in the description below. But let's get into it. Now, there was a little confusion, maybe a lot of confusion about the release of Mandalorian when Disney Plus was going live. And all of a sudden, 5 hours before it was supposed to go live, we start seeing on Twitter that people are watching it on their phones with the Android app and also with the Roku app.
It's like a VIP entrance or something that they had, just a little early entry to the app.
Only by a hair, because I was able to watch it like half an hour later on my computer, and I'm working on my mom's account here, and that's not Verizon. She paid for that. So
very strange what happened, but we got to watch it early, luckily, because then all the servers started crashing for Disney Plus, which of course we anticipated.
Who would have thought that was going to happen?
No one saw that.
We all did. Everybody.
Yeah.
Literally everybody.
Yep. So we'll go ahead and just start with our general reactions on that first episode. It was 40 minutes long. It was a little shorter than I thought it was going to be, to be honest. I thought they were going to be about hour-long episodes. And, I did an initial review for this channel, which I'm loving the comment section. I'm absolutely loving the comment section for that, guys. It's great.
Keep it up, right? Keep writing more and more.
Yeah, exactly. But, I thought it was good. I wasn't blown away by it. It did feel a lot more like Star Wars and a lot of what we've been getting from Disney lately. I had an issue with the score, with the music that was in it. That didn't quite feel right to me. Some of the choices, I didn't really like. The ending. Oh, before we talk about this is going to be a spoiler discussion, guys. It's out there on Disney Plus.
Thank you.
It is going to be a spoiler discussion. So if you don't want spoilers, then stay away. But the ending, I absolutely hated for reasons that I'll get into later. But for the most part, I enjoyed it. Little things here and there that I could nitpick. But what about you, Mary? What was your initial feelings?
So I made a concerted effort to come into this as objectively as possible, because I believe it's very important to kind of step into a new arena like this and not judge something based off of someone else's work, right? And I don't believe it's productive to hate just for the sake of hating. So there was that sort of concerted effort stepping in, and I from get-go was sort of like, okay, this has got me, and stayed sucked in for the entirety of the show. I felt like they did this fantastic job of walking the line between feeling like Star Wars, feeling sort of nostalgic, while still invoking a sense of wonder at the new content that we were being given. And I really enjoyed it from beginning. So I guess just to be super concise here, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it immensely. And I do look forward to the next episode. I recognize that this doesn't fix everything. In fact, it fixes really nothing as far as I'm concerned right now in terms of moving forward with the movies and things like that. But it does make me want to continue watching this show for sure. So yeah, that's where I sit.
Nice. What about you, Candace?
So $12 to $15 million spent on 40 minutes, resulting in better reviews than how much they spent on the movies, Lucasfilm movies lately. I just think it's an odd place to be for Lucasfilm with this release, and it'll be interesting to see where they go from here, taking all that into consideration, especially with Obi-Wan in production. So that's just my initial thought right off the bat. So the setting was, okay, so I've done so much deep digging in this that I was there's not a ton of times that I was like, okay, I wasn't expecting this. I was expecting a lot of what happened. And I was very happy with how it was presented. The setting for me was perfect. The idea of after the collapse of the Empire, the galaxy basically falling into a wild, wild west of sorts, where people are struggling to find territories and sources of power to regain that back. You see pockets of dirty stormtroopers who are obviously, they are looking for places to be able to stay and be safe after this, the end of this, major event. So we're kind of in this, just this kind of overall very just kind of dark era kind of mood. And I felt that, I know the music was something you did not like, but I felt that at least initially, because I really took note in the beginning, the music was very low and sparsely, very sparse notes. They used a recorder, which is something very key with most Western films. And it sort of resembled The Mandalorian in a way, very low key, sparse notes here and there, very, it was, I thought it mimicked that. And whenever things started to pick up with The Mandalorian, of course, the music would follow cue. His look was fantastic. I loved his, if we're talking just initial setting here, the starting from behind him, it's like a video game. We're literally following him everywhere, starting directly behind him, getting to know his daily routine, essentially what his day looks like. So I dug it. I dug the perspective.
Yeah. And so we can really kind of start from the beginning, kind of walk through what happened. And in the beginning, we do get that shot from behind him, and as he's tracking a bounty on the snow planet, which I don't know if we ever got the name of officially, which is one thing I was curious about. Yeah,
I think so. I was looking it up, and they were if you use subtitles, you can often find they say what language that they use. And let me see here. This, it was Kubazian was the language of the native that was there.
Kubaz, okay.
Yes. So that was, but that might not be it. But that's what I imagined.
Well, that is an ice planet, so that does make sense if that's the case.
Yes.
But yeah, it was never named in the show itself. Right. So we get that look of him behind there, and he starts walking off, and he goes into the cantina for this, cantina scene that was probably the thing that stole the show and has stolen the show for Mandalorian since it opened. Since we saw its debut, since we saw that first trailer, it was that fight scene in the cantina.
Yes.
And I love the sort of tightrope that they walked between, hearkening back to sort of the cantina feeling of this sort of dirty, grimy underworld atmosphere that you've got going on here in this sort of outskirts area, and this ordeal, right, where everybody's very on edge and it's uncomfortable, and still walking it over to a sort of Western feel and giving you something old and new at the same time. It was an absolute tightrope walk, and Candace and I were talking about that earlier, and that was sort of a full credit to her for using that word. It was a wonderful balance.
You can have anything you want, girl. You take
it. Well, full credit to Candace. Her brain is beautiful, not to mention everything else. But she sort of hearkened it back to she sort of compared it to this tightrope walk between giving us something old and nostalgic while still giving us something new and fresh, and that made me excited. It made me happy to feel both the nostalgia and the wonder of something new, and so that was thrilling for me. And I know that some people have given it a little bit of a hard time over the door close on the guy and the sort of slicing in half that we didn't see that. But look, the implication is more than enough for me. I don't necessarily need to watch a person be cut in two in front of me to understand the gravity of what just happened. It was still like, oh, okay.
It's because you're a girl.
So So speaking of girls, I'm also a girl, and I saw something kind of unique to the moment as well. You know, yes, this was the cantina scene. Yes, this was a fight scene, but this was also a scene we really got a good glimpse inside of what the Mandalorian is truly about. He was being bullied. He was being approached by these baddies or whatever, and it wasn't until they knifed his armor that he took serious offense. And it was at that moment we started to understand what was truly important to our Mandalorian, and we get further reference of that throughout this this episode. So that was one big deal. The other thing regarding the dooring, if you will, so for me, it wasn't so much the door cutting the Quarren in half. It was more so the quick nature, split second decision making of our Mandalorian that was very impressive to witness. Yeah. So he was going to pull him in with his wrist grappler, but because the Quarren decided to pull a shot off, he immediately decided to, okay, this guy's not worth it. I'm going to go ahead and end it here. Hit the door mechanism really fast with a gunslinger style at the hip shot, and Quarren is doored. So to me, we got really great glimpses from that cantina scene of who it really is that we're watching here.
Well, and this is where he's comfortable, right? This is his element, and he's completely and utterly cool with this. Walks in, owns the place, and just handles business, and then tidies up and is, I can take you warm or cold, either way. This is
exactly
absolutely where he is comfortable. He's in his element here, and so we got a great impression of how easily he slides into that role and has no problem. He can be.
And it was a lot of body language that spoke a lot of the role. For me, a lot of the body language, because the dialogue was sparse, but like in most Westerns, it's the same way. And you still get a kind of a good bit to chew on in terms of character development regardless.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Ryan, poor Ryan sitting over there. We've just been like, blah, blah.
Yeah, so I would say two things that, and I did enjoy it. I really enjoyed the fight. I enjoyed him using the different gadgets. The one thing that kind of like took me back, like taken out of it was one, it seemed like it was supposed to be a callback to like maybe when Luke is getting bullied in the cantina. But that to me makes a lot more sense to thugs coming up and picking on Luke, who's this farm boy who's very naive and looks like he doesn't belong, rather than deciding for no apparent reason to pick a fight with one of the baddest dudes that they could ever see in a Mandalorian. Like they knew who he was immediately when he walked in. So they obviously know who Mandalorians are. It seemed like a strange decision for me to go bully him, but it did establish his badassery. And then I probably would have just shot the Quarren. That's just me. But it is fancier to slice him in half by shooting a door
Take
mechanism.
No prisoners, Ryan Kinnell, RK Outpost, yes.
And then you turn to find out that there is a guy in there who is the bounty that he's looking for.
Horatio Sands from SNL.
And he says,
of all people.
He says, hey, I've got money. I mean, I can give you money. And he's like, basically your choice, warm or cold, whether you're coming with me. Yeah. Which does, like you said, kind of establishes that he does have a code of honor, that he's not just going to get paid off, which is a traditional, very typical of like a traditional Mandalorian that we would come to expect, someone who is a dude who may be skirting the law or whatever, but does have a code of honor. And then he takes him, tries to go back to his ship. It's established that he does not like droids. He doesn't want to take this nice speeder with a droid. He decides there's a little bit of humor where he sends that nice one away and a crappy speeder pulls up. And he decides to take that instead.
I found it analogous to today. It was kind of low-key comedy moment where, we have kind of this influx of more autonomous driving vehicles. And a lot of people are like, nope, I don't care how new it is. No, thank you. I'll take a person, please. And so instead we get land speeder Uber. And I thought that was kind of just a fun little nod to kind of what we experience, what we may experience in our foreseeable future.
Okay.
I agree 100%. And I adored the sort of moment where it's like the coin does the talking, right? He's happy to let the coin do the talking at this particular moment. He sets down his rules and he doesn't take any guff. And this is he just wants this over with. So flips the coin. Let's just handle this and move on with our lives, right? I don't know. It moved at a good pace for me, and I felt like they hit all the beats that they needed to hit to make it to continue to move forward at a good pace. So I liked it. It was fun. Just flip the coin and let's go.
Yep. So we get back to his ship, which is parked in the middle of the ice. I don't know how he initially got from there to the cantina, but his ship is parked in the middle of the ice, And yeah, they
called it Landspeeder Uber, of course.
Yeah.
Right?
Evidently, yeah.
With that.
Yes. So used his comlink, called Landspeeder Uber. That's how he got there in the first place. But they get back there and the taxi driver's like, hey, make sure you don't hang out here long. Don't hang out on the ice. And sure enough, as they're loading up, you see there's a creature underneath the ice who starts coming towards them.
Yes. Candace caught what that was, though, which I thought was fantastic. Candace,
wait, what do you mean? Just like kind of the scene in general? It was totally Tremors. I mean, gosh, the entire scene of the ice cracking it brought on a lot of that kind of movie feeling to me, and I didn't mind it. And then of course, as the Ravenex attacks the Razor Crest, our Mandalorian in true Star Wars holiday special fashion pulls out the forked pulse rifle and gives that Ravenex sea creature a little poke because, electricity and water don't go well together. And, they're on their way. So I just thought it was kind of a fun little
and what a great
nod.
Easter egg, right? What a great Easter egg. What a nod. What a wonderful nod. While still, again, progressing the story forward and giving an idea of the sort of landscape that we're functioning within here. And it flowed seamlessly. It was interwoven beautifully within this entire sort of scenario that we're handed. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it so much. It heightened the experience. And that is something that I want from these things, from these presentations that were being given for Star Wars. I want you to give me both the old and the new. If you're going to give me the old, bring it in a way that is conducive to telling the story in a positive and forward moving manner, right? Like do this in a way that is helpful, not just for the sake of the member berries, right? And that was something I felt that this show did. It did a wonderful job of. So.
Yep.
Yeah. And so we move from there. They're back safe on the ship, and the bounty is basically just nervous as hell and trying to talk his way out of everything. Mandalorian wants nothing to do with it. Stays straight, doesn't say a word. Basically says, I got to go to the bathroom, or whatever his species way of going to the bathroom is, which is essentially like molting.
Evacuate, I think.
Yeah.
Evacuating his thorax, meaning that he's some type of insectoid being, essentially.
Yeah.
That doesn't matter too much, but so he tries.
He didn't do it since the last solstice, so he's holding a lot in.
Wow, multiple more time.
Yes, so he is wandering around in the hold of the ship, trying to find a way out. Right, all the while talking to the Mandalorian, and he turns and looks and sees slabs of carbonite. Just like we've seen before in Star Wars. Like Han Solo. Slabs of carbonite with people in surprise or pain or whatever it may be. Yeah. And Mandalorian comes up behind him, basically says, you're next, and throws him in there, and he gets frozen as well.
It's a carbonite facial, if you will.
I love the progression of technology, though, here, right? So we're talking about, this is roughly 5 years or so after the fall of the Empire. So, roughly 10 years after Empire Strikes Back. We're looking at a natural progression of the technology. And of course, bounty hunters are going to pick up this carbonite freezing method here, because that's so easy. It's, of course, you're going to take your bounties in this way. They're way less fuss and they're way less trouble. And absolutely, it seems like a natural progression of the technology while still being a callback and being completely practical to what it is that we're experiencing again in this scenario here. So I loved it. I thought that was a fantastic way to incorporate the callback and still do what we're supposed to be doing right here. I loved it. And it also showed the ability here within the show, because I was endeared already to this little blue insectoid who's quite sort of clumsy and oafish and terrified, and he's just, he may be a bad guy, but he's not a bad guy, and so he's endeared to me already. And they just chucked him in some carbonite and called it handled, and I was like, well, expectations subverted, and I kind of liked that guy, but I also kind of was happy that they were willing to go there with it. Like, yeah, sure, we'll chuck him in carbonite, whatever. And I thought that was pretty great. So,
yep. So then he goes back to another planet and he meets with Carl Weathers' character, who we find out is the one who's basically in charge of handing out the bounties. And, he turns in the bounties, gets an offer of Imperial credits for the bounties. He basically says, that's no good. Like, I don't want Imperial credits. Right? I can't spend those. And is about to take the bounties back away. Carl Weathers gives in and says, all right, listen, I've got some Mon Calamari or Republic credits. I can pay you in them, but it's only half of what I could have given you. And he accepts it. So that really tells you right away the kind of situation the galaxy's in, where Imperial credits are really declining in value, and it's getting tougher to spend them as the Imperials lose more territory as this war continues on.
And I think it's also that, and the fact that it's the Imperial, a little bit later, not to go too far ahead, but we see that the Empire has done some stuff with that's dear to the Mandalorians. They have their insignia on the Beskar, and they've got, it seems like that in and of itself would make me feel like perhaps, and he didn't want to deal with anything with Empire. And I feel like maybe that's also a personal choice, even if it did, which you're right, obviously it doesn't, but even if it did, I think that there's a personal issue with the Empire because of the Great Purge, if you will, that's mentioned in a little bit. So that's my take on that.
Yep.
And this is speaking the Huddies, right? Yeah, that's in that particular canteen. I was very
it's just a little bit ahead, but I believe that the idea of not accepting that type of coin, although it doesn't seem practical because of the time frame, but even if it did, I feel like because of the code of how important and endearing their armor is to them, and the fact that they would stamp essentially claim their Beskar, it would be one of the biggest hits to their being. So I would imagine they wouldn't want to have anything to do with them.
Yeah. There's a pride here.
I guess we'll talk about that in a little bit. But Carl Weathers, he basically asked, "What do you got? What else you got for me?" And it's just a bunch of really low level stuff. People skipping bail, nothing big. And then he tells them about, well, there is this one contract that he basically makes up to be a lot of people try to take it. Nobody's come back. It pays a lot, but it doesn't have the normal process for doing the bounty. It's not just a little puck that you take that gives you authorization on the information. It's a face-to-face meetup for this bounty. And of course, the Mandalorian is going to take it. So he goes to this meeting. You get a little a callback, I guess, if you want to call it, with the kind of the robot eye that comes out of a door, just like at Jabba's palace, right?
You get a lot of Tatooine feels from this place.
I actually even saw some Jawas.
I really feel
not
like
on Tatooine, which that is interesting to me. But so he goes in this place. He doesn't really know what to expect. Door opens and it's stormtroopers there.
And they look like garbage. It looks fantastic. I loved how disheveled they were. How it tells you the sort of state of this sort of movement, that it's been so completely and utterly dethroned. And they're still trying, obviously, but they look like garbage. So,
yeah,
awesome.
And he followed essentially a garbage can to them too, which is
right.
Funny. The Donald is so cute. I love that. When he opens the door, I love we have you 4-1, and I like those odds. That's a wonderful, another little liner. But I love that this is when everything changes in the story. Pretty much that it's no longer a normal day for our Mandalorian, and so from here on out, what was before is no longer. The rules are changing, and you're going to see that from this point on. So you get the clear feel of change, from the music choices to the interactions he has and so forth. So oh my gosh, I want the client Werner Herzog to speak to me bedtime stories. He is fabulous. I love his voice.
I would fall asleep to his voice because it's so unsettling, but I would love to listen to some spooky stories or something with him by a fire. Let's go back to Halloween, y'all.
I love how he says just the fob, so I mean, he could it's great. I want a ringtone with his voice. Anyways, moving on.
So it turns out that this is a lot different, right? There's very little information known about this bounty. All he knows is that the person is 50 years old and he has a tracking device. That's all he knows. Usually you get a lot more details about the person, so they're able to identify them, but this one, not so much. But it's going to be a huge payoff, and the down payment is this chunk of Beskar. Now, if you don't know what Beskar is a metal that is
steel, right?
Beskar. Well, Yes, that's what the people referred to it as in the cantina.
It's like a rare precious metal, though.
Beskar is a rare precious metal. Listen, I am not quite sure about this new Disney canon, but in the expanded universe, it was only found on Mandalore, and only Mandalorians really knew how to work it. And so it was it was incredibly, it was rare in value because it was incredibly strong.
Yeah.
And that's what true Mandalorian armor is made from, as well as many of their weapons, their traditional weapons that they use. That's the down payment, and it clearly gets the Mandalorian as excited as he can become underneath his helmet.
I think the excite isn't just because of it being that the payment. I think it's also reclaiming the Beskar, because he's taking back what was stolen or what was taken. I think their goal is to take as much of it back as they can.
They made a point of giving him, essentially for the payment, a bar with the Imperial seal on it, right? You can sort of see the tenseness of the situation he's telling him, hey, it really should be back in the hands of the Mandalorians after a time of such upheaval. And you can
clearly feel that.
You can really feel it through the screen, this sort of desire to reclaim this thing that is heritage. And I felt like that did a measure of justice to the importance of it to Mandalorians. I felt like it was very respectful, and it highlighted it in a solid way. I loved it. I loved the Imperial seal addition to it. Like it spoke volumes without saying a word.
Yeah.
And I guess that was going to be the one thing. It's clear that that Werner Herzog is a person who works for the Empire in some capacity, right? That's why he got his hands on that Imperial Beskar. That's why there's stormtroopers with him, even though they are a little bit disheveled. There is a doctor there of some sort. We don't really know his involvement yet.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, Dr. Pershing.
Yeah, we don't know his involvement yet. But so
he's, by the way, the actor that plays him voices a lot of Battlefront 2 and Clone Wars. He was in Clone Wars a lot, and even Titanfall 2, which is kind of a funny reference. Cool. So yeah, now he's on screen. So it's interesting. I think his character is going to have a lot of importance as we move on into the next few episodes. Just keep an eye out on him.
Yeah, definitely. And so he takes the Beskar and immediately goes back to essentially this little club. I guess I don't know really what to call it, but he walks in and there's a Mandalorian crest on top of it, and it's essentially a blacksmith with somebody working the forge. And he brings the Beskar to her, and you kind of see they open up the back, and you see that they have been stockpiling all this Beskar, all this Beskar weaponry, right? Reclaiming it for their own. And she melts it down and makes him a shoulder plate, a Beskar shoulder plate, which you don't have before.
Yeah, the pauldron. Yeah.
Yes.
I think she even she even asks him, or she says something to the effect of, I think, a pauldron, right? Which was interesting. And you watch as the actual bar melts, and they make a point of focusing in on the sort of erasing that Imperial seal for a moment. There's sort of satisfaction in that, and that was really cool.
The whole scene was ritualistic in nature. When you walk in at first, you think this is some place of worship, and it just shows the intensive nature that the Mandalorians have towards their armor, how they hold it dear, how it's such a part of their core belief system, at least represented in this movie, or in this show rather. And the armor, the female armorer is Emily Swallow, who is a main character in this show. So we are going to be seeing some more information coming out about her. I think there's going to be some interesting stuff, and in some of the trailers we see stormtroopers taking over this armorer area, and so there's going to be a lot going on with that specific place, and it's very interesting. I loved the imagery that it when they filmed, just how they filmed it all, just making it so ritualistic, and then showing as she's hitting the hammer, going back into the flashbacks with the hammer. I truly enjoyed that hammer montage, if you will.
There's a real sense of reverence in this moment for what
he's
it is.
Kneeling.
Yeah, complete reverence. And then you sort of get this another moment of, and it, you could say exposition, but it never really felt clunky to me. The revelation that this is a foundling, right? So this is someone who's been adopted into the Mandalorian way, and you recognize that he's Mandalorian, but not by birth. And so this is perhaps he has something to prove, because later on you'll come to find that it sort of seems like a little bit of a hot button topic for him. Like you push that button, he's a Mandalorian. Oh, you're a Mandalorian, right? Then suddenly he seems to be galvanized and will push himself further and farther. And I think perhaps that's out of feeling the necessity to prove himself. I'm not sure, but it certainly piqued my interest about the character himself. So.
Yep. So he gets his new pauldron, his shoulder plate, and it's clear to me that that's going to be a part of the show from now on. And when you look at that's why when you looked at the different trailer drops that you had him, he was wearing different pieces of armor. That was pretty clear. Yeah. So that's something that I think a lot of us expected to happen in the show. And he travels to the planet where this new bounty supposedly is. He gets there. He looks around. He doesn't see much other than some two-legged bergs, which are these bipedal creatures that are there. And he gets ambushed by one, just like we saw in the trailer. Just a side note, a lot of this episode we had already seen. As far as like scenes, I feel like almost nearly every scene in this pilot episode we saw in a trailer at some point. Mm-hmm. Not the whole thing in its entirety, but at least some of each scene.
Sure.
So he gets attacked. He is trying to fight them off and ends up getting saved by an Ugnaught. How do you pronounce his name? Is like Quill? Is that what it is? Yeah, an Ugnaught named Quill, who I've never heard an Ugnaught talk before, but this Ugnaught talks basic. Kind of, Candace, you brought up, he kind of speaks like how we see Native Americans depicted in a lot of media.
He is the Native American to our space cowboy duo, and from everything from at the very end when he leaves, he does this at the end, which is a Native American sign for friend, which he was very friendly, very apropos to do that. I have spoken. I want that on my car. I think that's fantastic. Just the mannerism in which he speaks and how his tone. How he helps him learn how to ride a bareback. That is, it's very clear to me. It's very clear to me, and how he would just wants peace, and it's just very clear reference all around.
Yeah, and what did you think of this whole thing, Mary? Because he saves him, and he essentially says, he helps him, and he's like, you need to learn to ride one of these things because there's no other way to get to where your bounty is than riding one of these creatures.
Sure. Well, I mean, we got a good look at the landscape, right? It's pretty cracked and broken, and some of those gaps are pretty wide. And so I can understand why there may be some necessity in using a creature that's, I believe we're on Ryloth, because Candace and I Googled the crap out of everything earlier. So it looks like we're on Ryloth, where those, at least blurgs, that's where they're native to. And so they would be equipped to go across this terrain.
And it's close to Tatooine too, which was right there. So it seemed like that would make sense.
So I felt like this was a good opportunity to see our main character, our little Mando, out of his element, right? He's been attacked by these creatures, and he's had to be saved by Quill, and Quill is very, very, well, at least I get the impression that he's very warm towards him, all things considered. If nothing else, he feels that he's beneficial to his ultimate goal here. So he's very helpful to him. He saves his life, and our little Mandalorian's out of his element. And so he's trying to deal with the situation at hand. This is perilous. People have not come back from this over and over again. And so maybe it is best to try to kind of take what help you can get and assistance in this situation. And it's not as if he's completely warm to him right away. He throws it to him. Hey, well, if you've been helping everybody get out of here and they're all dead, I'm not sure I want to listen to you. And he's like, you don't have to, but you're probably going to die. And so it's not as though he immediately warms up to him. Then you get a cut, right? You get a cut, and you have something of a time skip here. I'm assuming I tend to believe that was probably overnight. So they've had some time to build a little bit of rapport, and he's in another new situation where now he has to learn how to ride this thing and get around this. And how does Quill galvanize our Mandalorian? Well, he reminds him he's Mandalorian, and we know he's a foundling.
You could ride the great mythosaur. Your ancestors rode the great mythosaur.
Ancestors, well, they're not really his ancestors, though, are they? And so that is very much a moment where he has to dig down deep and find something that works here. And so he hit a button, and something had to work. And so he tried a different tactic. And I felt like that was great character building there in that moment, because you transitioned from this sort of person who's comfortable in his skin in one scenario, and then in another scenario he's not, and you've now pushed a button and he has to figure something out. And so I felt like that was really wonderful character building in that moment, and it progressed us forward, and I loved it. And Quill's adorable, and Nick Nolte was born for this. So yeah.
One other thing to add, Quill did have a reason why he did what he did. He wanted the newcomers, the baddies that were leftovers from the Empire that landed there and took over that part and took away the peace that he was used to. He saw the Mandalorian and knew right then and there he wants this guy to fix that. So yeah, he helped him, but he did have a goal in place there for the end.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely.
So, and then he finishes his little training montage, and he can now ride this Borg, and you hear some music that sounds legitimately kind of like a Rocky movie, which I thought was a strange choice and cringe. I didn't like it. And then he heads off to find the bounty, and he's overseeing. He sees a lot of people, a lot of enemies that he's going to need to find a way to get around, trying to figure out how to do this. And he sees a bounty droid, IG-11, just walking straight up. And IG-11 is pretty straightforward. He says, "Oh, according to this bounty regulation, you need to listen to me and hand over the bounty." That obviously doesn't go very well.
What is it? His guild was.
It's the Bondsman Guild, and it's not a bounty hunter guild. So it's confusing to see that they could possibly be from two different places, and that's why we have this sort of if you recall the conversation between our Mandalorian, the client, and Dr. Pershing, the client said that he does want the bounty alive, but knows that bounty hunting is a complicated profession, and references Dr. Pershing and saying, due to that, we understand that if it must be, if you have to kill them, you have to bring them in, bring them in dead. Dr. Pershing was like, that's not the plan. Okay, so there's obvious commitment here to bring in the bounty alive with this client, and with this other bounty hunter, IG-11. Things are not what they seem. And so I like that. And everything's just out of, this is not a normal day. He is obviously experiencing a lot of things that are not what he was expecting for this bounty. And so I think just the dynamic of going into that place that way, and then seeing somebody else just walking in all silly, like IG-11 style, and they're just guns a-blazing, it's just kind of, it was kind of a funny juxtaposition of our two main guys there.
Suicidal droid is suicidal. I know that had the humor off on that particular scene, but I was so highly amused at IG's just like, time to die. Okay, because I mean, look, you don't know exactly all of the ins and outs of why it is that he felt like he should self-destruct, but there were reasons there in place. It did flip a little quickly at places, like, okay, I'm going to kill myself. Okay, I'm not going to kill myself. I think that was done for the purposes of humor, and it did make me laugh. I was amused, and it was a sort of bit of levity after this kind of long haul through getting to know this character who's begun our journey. And so I liked him. I liked IG. I thought he was great, and I thought he did a wonderful job of bringing that sense of levity to the situation. Could it have been a little more carefully flowing? Like, could have flowed a little better in terms of, I'm gonna die, I'm not gonna die, I'm gonna kill myself, I'm not gonna. He's like, stop it, just stop it. No, you're gonna kill yourself. I guess it was a little clunky there, but it was still funny.
It's an all-out shoot 'em up, like just a shootout. So yeah, I like the chaos in the scene, because the scene in and of itself is chaos, and I appreciate that part of it. Of course, when our Mandalorian just takes over the turret and does a little 360 thing around like a dancer, it was interesting. I did like the music choice at that point, not so much when he was writing the blurg. I felt that the moment in and of itself was convincing enough that this is a very new part to him that we needed to see. The music took it to an extra level we didn't need. Here it was appropriate. So I like the scene. So and it set us up well to what was next, because they just worked together so well right there, and then something happens right after that sort of changes it all again.
Yeah, and I will say the fight scene for the most part, I did really enjoy it. There was two criticisms I would have. Overall, it was like awesome. Two criticisms I would have is one, at one point, the Mandalorian, somebody comes out of a door behind him and they just like push him in the back in the middle of an enormous firefight. I'm not sure why you would come out and push someone in the back instead of, shoot them or not just push them in the back and try to get away or whatever. And then I loved when he does use his whipcord to pull the turret away and off target from them and then shoot the guy who's doing it. And then he hops on. I did really like that. I wish it would have been I wish it would have been a little quicker as he's then, spinning around 360. I feel like it takes a while. A lot of people could have got shots off on him at that time.
They took that moment to really just embellish the 360, I feel like.
I think so too. I think it was left being grounded there a little bit, but but overall I thought it was awesome.
And it was his 360 to IG's 360 too, because IG was bringing the 360s all over the place.
And so then they're ready to enter. They've decimated everyone there. They've made a deal that, all right, well, I guess we'll split it 50-50, right? That's kind of the deal that they agreed upon since they're both there at the time. And they enter the room where they know the bounty's at. I think there's one person still left in there that the Mandalorian takes care of. Kind of says, anybody else? Of course, I think everyone's dead. So the answer is no.
Yeah.
And except for the bounty. And he uses the little fob, the tracker, and they locate this, little round object, and he uncovers it, and
it's an egg.
Yeah, it does kind of look like an egg.
It looked like something from the Rebels. The way that it was designed, it seemed rebellish to me. I don't know what it was though.
It's essentially a cradle. That is what it is.
Yeah.
And it opens up, and the Mandalorian says, "There's no way."
Ryan's favorite part.
Yeah,
pops out.
This part sucks. The Mandalorian says, "There's no way." It says it's 50 years old, and IG says, "Well, some species age at different rates." And there, I rolled my eyes because I thought I knew it was going to happen. And sure enough, we see a green little Yoda species. A little baby, looks like Yoda, because it is a species, Yoda's species. We don't know the name because George Lucas, in the past had been very adamant about never exploring Yoda's species at all, keeping it a mystery. So I didn't like it. I thought it was very much for shock and awe and to leave people's mouths hanging open. And I didn't like it. But that was the reveal at the end, and that's the end of the episode. Well, not quite.
Touches his finger like E.T.
Yeah.
Oh no.
So what was you guys' reaction to that part?
Mary, you want to go first, or?
Yeah, look, I don't have any huge problems with it. I think it's fine. I'm not an EU aficionado. I'm not super deep into the lore here, and so I recognize that they should be used sparsely. And is it a device to some extent? Sure. I think it's too early to say whether or not this is completely and utterly out of bounds. If there's a reason, and thus far, it looks like they've had a reason for doing all of the callbacks that they've done. And so I've been impressed with that. I think as long as there's a reason for it to be this, that I think that it should be fine. And I thought it was cute, and I thought the moment between them was precious, and another opportunity to get to understand the man that we're spending so much time with now, the man who's standing here in front of this infant who reaches out and touches him, and he touches him back, and I'm like, oh, that's so cute. So yeah, I was good with it. And I also enjoy watching Ryan cringe. So if nothing else,
I just think we're giving Disney Star Wars a lot of benefit of the doubt that they have a reason to do all these things.
This is the first episode of a series, so I'm going to say that I'm judging my opinion solely on the first episode. I have no idea where the plot line is going to lead us. I have no idea how I'm going to feel about that, but this in of itself is what I can say. And regarding this reveal, this little green baby reveal, because we don't know the species. I'd say that the reveal was important, but just as important was what happened after the reveal, when IG-11 says the mission, he says explicitly that the mission was to terminate, and that was a far cry from what our Mandalorian heard from the client. And so one has to ask themselves, so if they're working together in the same guild or whatever, if they're working together in some respect, how would they have such different information? Who's pulling the strings in the back? That's kind of what I want to know moving forward, and that's why I think Dr. Pershing is going to be an interesting character in that respect.
Staying in the same guild, Joe. Staying in the same guild.
Yeah, lots to unpack in this, and we just covered, we did a good detail, I think, covering of the majority of it. There's a lot more, and I think all of us are going to have things on our channels that go into other parts of it that we don't bring here. So I like to see all you guys' takes too about, further exploration in this.
Yeah, and I think you guys very much like this. Thought it was very much a callback to like the Star Wars that you were looking for. I thought it was. I thought it was okay. Yeah, I thought it was okay. I don't think it was groundbreaking. I do think it was good. If I was like to give it a grade, it'd probably like 7 out of 10 or something. I'm definitely willing to see more and see where it goes. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you polish up a turd and you're like, well, I've been seeing shit for a long time, and that looks better.
The standards have been lowered for sure over the last decade. So I'm glad to see something. And like I said earlier, they're spending this kind of money on 40 minutes. It's just interesting to see how this affects their future trilogy and the live action series moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I was overall pleased with it. Sure, there were a couple of moments that you could nitpick it, and there's a lot of ground to be made up overall in terms of the relationship status being built back up between Disney and fans. And this is certainly not going to do anything in and of itself to repair that. But I'm happy to see such love poured into a project again. There's clearly passion behind this, and isn't that one of our biggest gripes, that there's been no love? There's been no love for the thing that they were creating.
John Favreau called it a love note to the originals. So
they love this. That's clear, and I think that's a good, that's a decent step, and I'm willing to acknowledge that.
I agree.
Yep. I would just say, remember Force Awakens when everybody thought they really liked Force Awakens. That's all that I'll say. Just a warning to people.
I'm just.
Yeah, but I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. Like I said, I did enjoy it myself, just not quite the same level. But I think we got a good difference of opinions here, which is kind of what this is for. And I'm glad we're all able to get together and do this. In the future, we're going to try to schedule it so we can actually do streams right after each episode of The Mandalorian and really break it down and get a really raw reaction right then. Yeah.
And more of a round table, not a triangle table. We might have another one join us next time.
Yes, we need a square table.
Square table.
So we need a rectangular table. But thank you guys for joining us. Do you guys have any last words, Mary or Candace?
Real quick, I just want to say Friday is going to be a great day, you guys. We got drop of Fallen Order, so be sure if you're going to play that, hop online. I'm excited about that. EA better knock it out of the park with this one, and I'll be playing live there too. So be sure to check it out if you guys like that sort of thing. I'll be online.
And you guys can find me over on my channel tomorrow evening on Wednesday Night Mayhem, where we'll be having a live roundtable discussion about this with some other members of the Fandom Menace. If you want to be able to kind of engage us in the conversation live, you can be in the chat and we can kind of discuss this a little bit more. So yeah, come check that out tomorrow night, guys.
Yep. Yeah. Well, thank you guys for joining me. Thank you guys for watching this long. And make sure that you're subscribed, you like this. Make sure you ring that bell for notifications so you know when every video goes up. And we'll talk to you guys later.
Bye.
Hey everyone, it's Jeremy from geeksandgamers.com, and if you're a fan of Geeks and Gamers, please go to our website, visit our merchandise store. We have t-shirts, hoodies, hats, beanies, tank tops, and in the very near future, we're going to have many more products for you to choose from. So thank you for the support. We appreciate it. You guys have a great day, and we will talk to you later.